Hi, this is Jim from Labelle Lubricants. We've been making lubricants for the model industry since 1975. Today I want to show you some of the reasons why there's many different lubricants in the Labelle line. Many years ago, there was only two fluids you put into your automobile, gasoline and motor oil. You use basically the same motor oil almost for every vehicle. Today, modern technology has moved to a point where there are different fluids and different technologies at different viscosities and different additives for different parts of your car. You've got a basic motor oil that comes in different weights. It varies per vehicle. You've got power steering fluid, which is also used in the engine compartment. And you've got transmission fluid. All of these have different viscosities and different additives for their intended purpose. Just for fun, this is an original package from 1975 of the first Labelle product when we were located in Bensenville, Illinois. At that point, we also were a one-product company, and we sold the same product basically for all model railroads and all scales. But things have changed with Labelle as well as the rest of the industry. Let me show you how. Just as with the automobile industry, Labelle has evolved over the years from a one-product line into a varied product line. But each product has its own specific uses, needs, viscosity, and additives for its intended purpose. You can see the full details on our website for each product. The 102 is almost a liquid grease. The 106 is a true grease. The 107 is our most popular item and used for HO and larger scale models. The 108 is for N and Z scale models and has a different viscosity than the 107. The 134 is actually powdered PTFE, which is the parent chemical of Teflon, and is non-staining, clean, and odor-free, and can be used in many applications if you're worried about leaving a residue. We have a kit both for HO and N scale of our most popular three products that also has needle extenders so you can reach in those really hard places. And for those of you who can't make up their mind what to buy, buying one of the kits is probably your best bet. We also make cleaning materials for locomotives and track, which you need to look up, especially if you're running on DCC. You want your locomotives and track to be trouble-free. Okay, down to the nitty-gritty. I'm starting out by showing you some N-gauge models. The first thing you'll need to do is remove the body shell from the mechanism. Depending on how dirty the model is, depends on how far you have to break it down. If you're not sure how the model comes apart, then refer to the original manufacturer's website to get an exploded view to find out where all the tabs, screws, or other reasons the body is attached to the mechanism so you don't break them during disassembly and then cannot get the model back together again. There's three common components to every locomotive, no matter if it's a diesel or steam. Number one is a high-speed motor. Usually runs at about 15 to 18,000 RPM. The second part is a gear train of some kind that reduces that speed somewhat, and by the use of worm gears, transmit them to power trucks or whatever that further reduces through a gear set the speed so you can control them at very slow speeds that you guys like for DCC. Now, for the basic motors, we recommend the 102, which is actually a very thin grease. You just need to put a drop or so on each end of the motor shaft, and I'll show you over here what it looks like. That's all you need, and you can probably hardly see it, because as the motor spins, the grease will work its way into the powertrain and into the motor itself. And it's fine. All our greases are both plastic compatible and dielectric, which means that if any of the grease gets on the motor components, it will not harm them at all. The second part is with the worm gears. On a worm gear, you actually want to use some of the heavier grease, but you only need to apply a pinpoint of it about the size of a grain of rice. Again, you maybe find it hard to see, but that's all you have to use. Because again, as this gear train starts working, it will spread the grease further down into the gear train to where it matches with other gears and eventually work out. You should notice an improvement almost immediately once you get it reassembled, but even as you run the locomotive for half an hour or an hour, you'll even see further improvement in its operation as the grease gets spread further and deeper into the mechanism. Now, if you have one of the older locomotives that has exposed gearboxes, we do not recommend using the grease at all. We only recommend using the 102. The reason for that is that if you put grease here, the grease is very tacky. It's going to pick up any debris you have along the railroad track, pet hair, and things like that. Scenic material like lichen or some of the strew material they use for grass, and get into the mechanism, clog it, and it won't run very well at all. The oil is light enough that it will not attract so much of the dirt and debris, but it will attract some. So any locomotive with exposed gearboxes have to be cleaned and lubricated much more often than one with enclosed gearboxes. Steam locomotives offer a little bit of a challenge, but they're very similar. The first thing you have to do is take off the boiler shell so you can get at the mechanism. Again, you have to go to the manufacturer's assembly sheets to figure out how to do that. Then what you need to do, same process. On the motors, you use some of the 102. On any of the gear trains underneath, where you have the driver sets, use the 106. Again, once you let the engine run for a while, it will work better and better over time. You'll notice even a noise difference on it. On a steam engine, the valve gear also needs to be lubricated. That's something many people ignore or overlook or don't think about. The reason for that is there's a lot of friction caused here with all these moving parts. We recommend 108. Put a few drops of that again. All you need is a drop on each side of the lubricant. If you get a little bit too much on there, just wipe it off with a clean cloth or a Q-tip, but you want to leave a little bit on there. So and again, the lubricant will work its way slowly but surely throughout the mechanism as long as you lubricate every point of contact where there's a moving part. That's it. Cleaning locomotives and re-lubricating them is a matter of time, not necessarily skill, using the information I've just given you now. Cleaning and lubricating HO locomotives is very similar to the N scale that we just talked about. All locomotives have three components. They have a gearbox with transfer gears in it. They have the motor mechanism, and they have transfer gears of some kind in the top of the gearboxes. The first thing you have to do is remove the body shells. You'll have to go to the manufacturer's website and see if they have exploded drawings on how to do that. Some of the old models may not. But anyway, you've got to figure out how to take the body shell off without breaking any plastic tabs or screw-mounted tabs or some other fancy way that manufacturers came up with to mount the body shell. Because you'll need that to reassemble them. In some cases, if you break the body tabs, you'll never be able to get the body shell to sit squarely on the frame again. Anyway, the first thing you need to do is lubricate the motors. The motors, I would use the 102 liquid grease and just put a dab on each end of the motors, on both ends of the flywheel and down in here, so that as the motor starts spinning, the liquid grease will work its way into the motor bearings and motor sleeves. The second thing you need to do is any of the gearboxes where you can get at them. Some are exposed, some are enclosed. You can use some of the 106 grease and you just put a couple drops on it, like I'm going to show you over here. That's only about the size of a couple grains of rice. Then once the model is assembled again and you let it travel down the track, the grease will work its way into the other parts of the gear train. More grease doesn't help. You're better to apply the grease once or twice over a period of, say, an hour, and let the grease migrate its way throughout the gear train. Over-greasing can cause more problems like picking up pet hair, lint, everything else, because the liquid grease is tacky. Okay, now we move on to some steam engines here. It's the same issue again, that the motor, you should lubricate with the 102 liquid grease. Inside the gear train, inside where the gears are, you need to use the 106. And we also recommend for areas like the valve gear that you use the 107, a point on each moving part of the valve gear, because there's a lot of friction created by the valve gear and a lot of people don't realize that. Also, the ends of the wheels that fit into side frames where they're rubbing together, you need to also use a little dab of the 106 on each end of the axles so they run smoothly and reduce the friction. The same would go on the diesels. You need a dab of the 107 on each end of the wheel sets where they run into the side frames. Other than that, if you have a model that has more parts than I'm showing here, our motto is, if it moves, lube it. Another couple of areas that people almost totally overlook when it comes to lubricating on a model railroad layout are the switches, because switches move, of course, and if you have them controlled with DCC motors, they should be totally clean of debris and be lubricated so both the motor and the switch points can turn freely. As a quick aside, we had one guy that kept complaining about his locomotives derailing at a certain switch all the time, and he eventually figured out it was a small fur ball from one of his cats that had lodged between the switch points and the thing, and that was causing his derailments. Anyway, all you need to do is put, again, recommended we make special lubes for switch points, etc. The smaller scales, 112, the larger scale is 113. There's a slight difference in the viscosity of these greases. Anyway, you just put a couple of drops on here, and by a drop I do mean a drop. You don't need more than a drop. You need to put them on both sides where they're moving, and the same if your switch machine is mounted underneath the layout, you need to also put that under the layout. You also need to lubricate, if you're using operating couplers, you need to lubricate the couplers because they have a jaw that moves back and forth, and they can become fouled and not work properly. So no matter what scale trains you're using, you need to give them a dab of oil in the knuckle area where the parts work together. I also wanted to point out in this short video that when you're lubricating and cleaning locomotives, the procedure for the large narrow scale trains or larger trains like Lionel and LGB would all follow the same procedure as I showed you in the earlier things about taking them apart and lubricating. Again, go back to the manufacturer for instructions on how to take them apart before you clean and lubricate them. Labelle makes two different cleaning kits for your model trains. The first one is our motor cleaning system kit, which comes with a professional grade degreaser and a little atomizer spray that goes in the bottle so you can spray it on the model. What you need to do is demount the motors from the model, and then you can use this to spray on the motors about 2 or 3 inches up in the air, and then twist the motor by hand, and it slowly will deposit a lot of debris underneath down here, and then let them dry for a few minutes and then repeat the process once or twice. When you're done, then you're going to have to re-lube the motor with actual lubricant. This is not a lubricant, it's only a cleaning degreaser. Now, this is a little bit smelly, so we suggest you do it outside, or if you have to do it inside, use some clean plastic material that you can throw away, or some cardboard that when you're done using it you can throw away. Otherwise your workbench is going to smell for a couple of weeks and you won't be happy with that fact. But it is great stuff. It's professional grade, and it'll work on your older models, or maybe some used models you bought at a flea market or yard sale. The second item is our 105 track cleaner. Track is a very important part of your model railroad, and keeping it clean is even more important because most people are using DCC now, and the DCC only operates when it transmits the packets of information to your decoder through the rails. And if the rails are dirty or not connected properly, you're going to get broken connections in that packet, and the decoder is going to get confused and going to do strange things. So you need to keep the track clean. We have a cleaning system here that's both a cleaner and a lubricant built into one, so that if you clean the rails to begin with, and I just cleaned these rails in an earlier take where I made a couple of verbal mumble jumble, so we had to redo it. This is supposedly new track, came out of a box. That's how much gook and grink we got out of brand new track. So what you need to do is clean it very well. Another way to clean your track is to put some of this lubricant on the rails as you go along. Just put a few drops on it, on the rail, and then run your trains around. And then behind the trains, as they go by, you can use one of the cleaning pads to clean up the dirt. And you'll be amazed how much dirt and blackness you see on the rails as you go clean up. But let the trains run for a while and keep cleaning the track. And after 4 or 5 passes, you'll see a huge difference, and you'll see the track slowly getting cleaner and cleaner after the trains go by. The other thing about this product is that it comes with an inner seal. So when you open the bottle, you'll see there's a seal inside here. You'll have to open that up, pull it out, but to reuse it, you don't have to put the seal back if you don't want to. Also, when you're done, recoat the track with a thin film of the same 105 and let it sit there and let the trains run, because that will help connectivity between the wheels on your train and into the decoder, because it is the lubricant that's in here does conduct electricity, so it's perfectly safe to use, and it is also a wonderful product created out of modern technology. I don't know.